Hello guys, today I'm gonna show you how to cover your simple Spring CRUD application with unit testing. And for this purpose, I just downloaded simple Spring CRUD project which has controller, which has repository and service layer. And now I'm gonna cover all those layers with unit testing. First of all, I'm gonna cover repository class with unit testing. I go to repository and create a unit test. Go to test. In this project I use PostgreSQL database, but for my unit testing I'm gonna use in-memory database to cover repository test. And for this purpose I need to add in-memory database dependency to my POM.xml file. Just navigate to your POM.xml file and add in-memory database dependency. Let me recall how to find in-memory database. Maybe IntelliJ IDEA could help me with autocomplete. And I should paste here H2, maybe it could find this way. It autocomplete, yeah, it found it, and I'm gonna select test in scope, test, and what error do we have here? Dependency not found, date maven indices, and that's it. And next dependency I'm gonna add is JUnit. Okay, and scope test. That's it. Now I'm ready to write my repository test. And under test folder, we're gonna create new folder resources. We can mark it as test resources. And I'm going to create application property file for test purposes. And I'm going to add some credentials for my in-memory database. Spring data source URL, GDBC, the same way as I did with PostgreSQL, but this time I do it for in-memory database. And username test. And we can specify driver class name. Looks good. Now we can navigate to our user repository test and create some test cases. But firstly, we need to connect some dependencies for our repository test. First repository is our user repository, because we gonna test user repository. it's just this object. And let's add some more annotations to mark this class as a repository test. First annotation is run with sprint runner, and second annotation indicates that we run data GPA test, and that's it. And first of all, we need to test find by login method. Let's just create and save some user before we will find him in database. Users, and let's give it some credentials. Set name test, and user set login test login. And actually for this purpose I'm gonna create a new class, like prototype class, to store my prepared entities, prepared objects for tests. Let's create some new package, prototype, and create new utility class, users prototype. And I'm gonna just copy those user object to my users prototype. And just return my created test user. I created this method just to reuse it in all my test cases. And now I'm gonna use user repository and call save method with my prepared user. Let's just import it. Then I'm gonna create a new user object, found user, which equals user repository find by login. And let's find by login for new user, get login. And we expect that our repository return us a user from database. Let's check it. We assert that found user, first of all, will not null. And secondly, let's check that our user has, for example, the same name as our user in database. And that's it. And let's try to run our test to check that it passes and to make sure our code works as we expect it. And it takes some time to initialize and to run the test. Please be patient. And our test failed. Let's check. Expecting. Oh, sorry, I just missed. The statement is not null. And this time it should work as well. I just made a mistake. Okay, now our test works as well, and we can be sure that our repository works fine. And the next thing I'm going to show you is how to cover your service layer with unit testing. Let's navigate to our service package and find our default user service. And our default user service has some dependencies. It depends on user repository and users converter. We just tested our user repository, and user converter is just a helper that converts user from user DTO to user, and from user to user DTO. That's just a helper for our service, and I'm not gonna test user converter separately, but I'm just make sure my user converter works as well in scope of default user service test. And we can see that we have here just method save user, which firstly validates user DTO and then converts from user DTO to user and saves to user repository. And as we have our user repository as dependency, we need to use a Mockito library to mock those user repository behavior in our test. Let's just navigate to the user service test, and I'll show you with example how to mock your dependency behavior. Okay, let's just select all the services, all the methods we're gonna test, and that's it. Now I'm gonna add those dependencies to my service test. Just remove the final because I'm gonna create it myself. In this case, we just injected our dependencies through the constructor, and I'm gonna create before each statement, which would be called before every test case. And in this for each statement, I'm gonna initialize our user converter and user test, and I'm gonna mock our user repository in those setup method. Let me create another object, users service, and first of all I mock users repository. Users repository. There are a lot of variants to mock your class, but I used through the mock method. There are annotation methods and in config methods, but I just used to use this mock method variant. Okay, and users converter, new users converter, and the last one is user service equals new default user service with our user repository and users converter in dependencies. And that's it, we are ready to test our first method. Let's test save user method, and I just navigate once again to the save user and try to mock user repository save behavior, and I say when user repository save with any params, I want my user repository return my prepared user object. Let me find my prepared user object in prototype class. Okay, and then return prototype user. How easy it's to create once a class and a method and then reuse a code instead of writing the same code in every test cases. And let me just create user DTO. Created user equals user service, save user, and I need some prepared user DTO. Let's navigate to our prototype and create another class, another method, static users DTO, a user DTO, and our users DTO has a builder annotation from Lombok library, and it makes our user DTO generation very easy. From this perspective, let's just use our builder constructor and I'm gonna set up some test data to our user DTO. Name, let's call it D test name, and login, test login, and that's it. Let's just call save user with prepared user DTO object, and add exception to method signature, and let's check that we have successfully created user. Assert that our created user is not null, and let's check that our created user converted successfully. Get name is the same as user DTO name, to make sure that our converter works fine and converts our fields as we expect. Is equal to user DTO get name, and let's check that our test case pass. Okay, and it works. And now I'm gonna show you how to test our validation exceptions. Let's close others. And in user service, we throw validation exception if user DTO is null or user login is empty or null. So I'm gonna show you how to check our validation exception is thrown when we pass, for example, user DTO as null. And let me just create another test case. Test the negative scenario. Save user, called save user, throws, and just copy paste name of exception when login is empty or is null, and then I just call assert throws construction throws validation exception class. In next parameter we're gonna pass our method call with run incoming params, user service, save user, and let's prepare some user DTO with empty login. I just select a user DTO and set it login as empty. It doesn't matter, it can be empty or null. We will have the same validation exception. And I'll try to save my user DTO, and in third parameter we can select the message we expect would be thrown. Just copy paste the message, and that's it. Now we can run and see that our test will pass because we called save user with invalid params, and that's it. That's how we tested our unhappy flow. Okay, and I'm not going to show you how to create test for delete user because it would be the same as for save user, and I'll just show you how to create some test cases for find by login, but for find all it would be the same as for find by login. I'm just not going to waste time for this boilerplate code. You just can cover it yourself after this tutorial. Okay, and find by login method, let's navigate and see what happens in find by login. And in find by login we just pass login, and we just go to user repository and trying to find user by login, and if user is found we just convert it to the user DTO, or we just return null. And first we gonna taste happy flow when user is found, and let's just navigate to our find by login test case and just pass. We just need to create a behavior for our user repository. When user repository, and for example, what if someone trying to find by login with test login? When we return prepared user, let me just recall how did we call our user, and we call it just a user, like prepared user. And then we can create user DTO, found user, and that's it. This found user should not be null. At least should not be null, and let's check that this found user has the same login as we expect. And let's run our test and see what happened. And that's it, looks good. And the last thing I'm going to show you is just test for our controller. Let's navigate to our controller class. And this is just simple CRUD controller which save user, delete, and find all or find by login. Let's create test. just select all the methods for our test case. And in this scenario, I'm gonna use mock MVC to mock our test requests and to check the responses from our methods. I just create mock MVC object, and also I'm gonna create object mapper just for the purpose to convert our objects to JSON, because our controllers works with JSON format, and I'm just gonna use object mapper to convert our objects to JSON and vice versa. Okay, and also we have a user service dependency, so I'm gonna add a user service dependency, users service. And as in the previous case, I'm just gonna create before each method, which will be executed before each test cases. And just first I'm gonna mock user service. Next thing, I'm gonna build my mock MVC object. And mock MVC builders just get you various possibilities to create your mock MVC object and to set up your controllers. Actually, you can customize any controller you want. You can customize your handler interceptors, you can customize your security interceptors, you can customize your filters, etc. Actually, now we have simple controller, so I'm gonna just customize our simple controller. I'm just gonna pass in standalone setup my controller object, users controller, which accepts user service as dependency, and I call build. And that's it. Don't forget to create object mapper. To initialize object mapper equals new object mapper. Okay, and we are ready to create our test cases. And first test case is save users, and I say that when user service save user with any params, then we just return prepared user DTO, a user DTO. And this time I typed the wrong name of method, user with uppercase DTO. Let's just copy paste and import. And we have an exception. Just throw it into method signature. And I'm gonna call mock MVC perform, and this perform method just accepts type of HTTP requests. In my save method I have post mapping, so I'm gonna paste post, and first param is just URL, which I'm gonna call it's just users, and save. Let me paste users, save, and then I expect my content type to be JSON, application JSON, and then I expect that I pass my content as user DTO object in JSON format. So I'm gonna call object mapper, write value as string, user, a user DTO, and then I just add exception to method signature and one more exception. Just start from the new line and expect that my status just doesn't want to import as well, and I expect that my status input static method would be okay, because I expect okay status, and I expect that my content type would be in JSON format, and I also expect that my response message, that my content, just let me start from the new line, just my content would be JSON, sorry, run brackets JSON. Let me use object mapper once again to convert from the object to JSON. Object mapper, write value as string, and I expect I will have my user DTO as well, and looks good. Let's try to run it and see what happens. And looks good. Test passed. And let me just show you one more example with the, for example, get mapping, find by login, or let's this time let's just get find all, and let's navigate to find all users, and let's do the same as we did with the save user test case, but this time we're just gonna create behavior for find all method when user service find all. Let's prepare some list of users. I just use one user as singleton list, a user DTO, because I'm lazy and I don't want to create a new method with list of user DTOs. And let's call mock MVC perform. This time we're just gonna use get instead of post, and actually we're gonna pass URL as well, users find all. Oops. And this time is the same as the previous one. We just need to add our behavior and then just paste expected result. Let's just go to content type, application JSON, and that's it. We don't have any incoming params, and I expect that I receive my list of users. Content is okay. Content JSON, object mapper, write value as string, singleton list. Let's just copy paste it from this method and start from new line in order you guys could see what happens here. And that's it, and we can just add, for example, expect and expect status is OK. Looks good. Let's start. Let's run it and see what happens. And it tests as well. It passes as well. Let's run all our controller tests, and all our tests should pass. Guys, that's all what I wanted to show you today. As you can see, it's very easy to cover all Spring Boot applications with the unit testing. So don't be lazy and write tests for your services, for your controllers. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I'm preparing some interesting videos. Bye.